The name Runeterra literally means magical land, and that name already shows Riot's goal of building a universe where magic is the central thing. And you can see that in a bunch of different ways. Like, you could take it to mean the land of magic, in the sense that it's a place where whatever fantasy you, the player, have can come true. So if you're into pirate adventures, there's a place for you. If you like samurais, spirits, demons, there's a place for that too. Stories about gods, Vikings, deserts, advanced tech, tons of wild and fantastical stories all fit into the world of Runeterra, and making all those stories, which are super different from each other, actually make sense together, that's really hard. That's where the other interpretation of the name kicks in. Runeterra as the planet where magic is everywhere and abundant. And that's also spot on. It's the mix of those two meanings that makes Runeterra such a unique universe. There are regions that see magic as a weapon, others see it as a force of nature, some think it's corruption, others treat it as something to study. And the thing is, magic can be all that and more. That's why in this video, we're diving into how each region in Runeterra relates to magic. Let's kick it off with Freljord. Freljord is hands down the wildest region in Runeterra. It's got a deep connection to magic from the very start. You can see that in their old legends about how the world began. One of the best ones tells how Ornn shaped the land's geography by literally fighting the earth. That shows how, for them, magic, represented by the divine, is what made the world the way it is. And that vibe pops up in tons of legends, but it's not just in them. This respect and worship of magic, especially in the form of demigods, is woven into their everyday lives. Take Braum, for example. He's got a ram symbol on his belt that represents Ornn. Or Ashe. She prays to a bunch of these divine beings. Like when she wishes an honorable death for her allies, she calls on the kindred.
Praise kindred, the two hunters. Pray we see death's approach, so we may complete our labors and die with our eyes open.
It's these small details that show how magic worship is just part of daily life in Freljord. It's in their actions, their interactions, their personalities, their clothes, everywhere. But it's not just in the little stuff either. Since these gods are actually around and super powerful, a lot of people make it their life's goal to follow their will, or try to tap into that divine power somehow. And each demigod's followers go about it differently. Ornn's followers, the Furnace Blood, are all about peace, creation, and perfection. They're seen as good dudes who help out others in lore events. Then there's the Ursine, Volibear's followers. They're brutal and violent. They literally turn into monsters, kind of like werewolves but white, and just wreck everything. They destroy, kill, cause chaos, exactly what Volibear's all about. Every tribe also has their own shaman or shamans. They are the bridge between the divine and the people, helping guide their decisions and way of thinking. And even though worship is probably the biggest part of Freljord's connection to magic, there's also a natural side to it. Magic is just part of daily life. You've got all kinds of magical beings living there, like yetis and trolls, but especially the Iceborn. The Iceborn are humans who were altered by magic. They've got a bunch of unique powers, like being able to use true ice. And even though that natural connection to magic is big in Freljord, it's nothing compared to the next region, Ionia. Also known as the First Lands, Ionia is soaked in magic from top to bottom. It's the region most connected to the spirit realm, and because of that, the whole idea of balance is a huge deal to them. Almost every Ionian has balance at the core of their lives. They're always trying to sync with the world around them, and they never take without giving something back. And that's not just some philosophical thing. It literally happens. There's this cinematic where a boy's cutting down trees and the land gets pissed. A forest guardian shows up to go after him. And how do they fix it? The kid plants a tree. So he cut down a tree, he had to plant one. Boom, balance. But that idea of balance and harmony isn't just physical either, it's spiritual too. The harmony between body and spirit is something the Wuju swordsmen aim for in their training. They don't just train their bodies, they also train their minds. That mind-body balance is the core of Wuju swordsmanship. That spiritual balance is a huge deal in Ionia, because spirits play a big role in guiding and protecting souls in the spirit realm. Speaking of spirits, there's a ton of different kinds in Ionia. Some are chill and protective, others are straight up corrupted, like the Azakana. Azakana are demons that feed off of specific negative feelings, like fear of change and stuff like that. But yeah, if you look at everything I've talked about so far, spirits, Azakana, how magic works, balance, mind and body, all of it is heavily inspired by Asian philosophies. Whether it's Buddhist ideas like karma, who literally reincarnates into a human host from time to time, or martial arts and dance techniques like Aurelia's or Zed's, or mythological creatures like Ari, who's clearly inspired by the nine-tailed fox, or Wukong, who's a nod to Sun Wukong. In general, Ionia feels like the region that dives the most into art as a way to channel magic and spiritual energy. You've got Irelia using dance to guide her blades, Sona, who uses the Etwal to manifest magic through music. Then there's Hui, who paints with magic, and the colors shift based on his emotions. There's even these wood weavers, people who use music to guide how trees grow so they can form structures like houses or bridges without cutting them down. They just help guide the growth. And lastly, we gotta talk about the Vastaya. Most of the Vastaya from Ionia are naturally linked to the spirit realm, which lets them see magic in tiny details like memories, nature, and little visual cues. That's why most of the League's Vastaya characters come from Ionia. And the animals in Ionia? Most of them are peaceful and try to live in harmony with humans and nature around them, which is completely different from the next region, one that doesn't care about peace at all and just wants to dominate. That would be Nexus. Nexus is an expansionist empire that values strength above everything else. If you're strong, you rise. If you're weak, the empire steamrolls you and moves on. Noxians treat magic like another tool in their arsenal, something super powerful, whether it's brute strength like Darius, mind tricks like LeBlanc, or arcane power like Swain. Being the biggest region in Runeterra, Nexus also has one of the most diverse populations. They don't care where you're from, your race, your background. If you can bring something to the table, you're in. And because they're so war-focused, a lot of the magic developed there is for war, like the blood magic that Vladimir and the Crimson Circle use to make armies of undead and blood constructs that fight even after death. So yeah, Nexus sees magic as a way to get stronger. It's all about war, power, domination, which is the complete opposite of the next region, Demacia. Demacia is one of the regions most tied to magic, but in a negative way. It was literally founded on the fear of magic during the Rune Wars, those massive, world-changing wars where people were basically nuking each other with magic. In the middle of that chaos, a group of people who were terrified of the conflict fled to a petrified forest in western Valorant. The trees there, made of this material called petricite, created a magic dampening zone where evil sorcerers couldn't hurt them. Nobody knew this at the time, but petricite could actually absorb magical energy, so it ended up being the perfect place for Demacians to hide from the war. Demacia was born out of fear, and that same fear shaped it over the centuries. A bunch of doctrines and rules about magic were created, but over time, they got twisted by corrupt people, which only made things worse. Back when Demacia was founded, mages were actually pretty common, but as time passed, people just forgot about that and grew super intolerant, blinded by this irrational fear. And it's not even about being afraid of what people could do with magic. It's fear of magic itself. The fear and hatred got so out of hand that they created a whole order just to hunt down and suppress mages. That's how the Mage Seekers were born. Over time, the whole thing just got more corrupt and hypocritical. When Demacia's nobility settled in and generations passed, obviously some noble kids were born with magical abilities. But when the time came to arrest them, the Mage Seekers didn't do anything. They just stood by and watched. Cause let's be real, they're not gonna lock up the people signing their paychecks. So basically, Demacia's anti-magic laws only apply to poor folks, straight up corruption at the highest level. But hey, not everything's totally grim. Things actually seem to be heading toward a more peaceful path after Silas's uprising. In the end, Jarvan signs a decree banning the Mage Seekers and creates a settlement where all Demacian mages can live freely and in peace. That place ends up being ruled by Lux, by the way. After that, we don't have much more info. But we do know that the future of magic in Demacia is looking promising, and there's been real progress. Still, it's never gonna outpace the next city on our list, which is literally called the City of Progress, Piltover. Piltover's relationship with magic is kind of weird. After Arcane, things started to shift. Before, magic was seen with wonder and curiosity, mostly because there were barely any mages around, like almost none. Seraphine is basically the only known mage there, and people didn't really understand how magic worked, so they either studied it for knowledge or tried to turn it into something profitable. But after Arcane Season 1, things started heading in a new direction. Now we can see that Piltover's leaders are kind of scared of magic, not on the same level as Demacia, but still, there's a lot of caution. But after the end of Season 2, with all of Victor's doings, I don't really know what Piltover's relation to magic is going to be. That said, it's pretty likely that, as time goes on, magic in Piltover will again become the main focus of study and trade, especially through Hextech. Speaking of Hextech, the idea behind it, using tech to understand and harness magic like a science, isn't actually new. That concept's been around for ages, like even back in He-Man, for example. But League puts its own twist on it, mixing steampunk with magic and giving it a unique vibe that's really cool. Anyway, the one thing holding Piltover back when it comes to magic is ethics and morals. A lot of scientists and researchers could push Hextech further with crazy experiments and stuff, but there are boundaries they won't cross. Which brings us to the next region, Zaun. The way Zaun handles magic isn't super different from Piltover, since they're basically sister cities and don't have much direct access to magic either. But Zaun definitely takes way more advantage of it. Since they don't have much to work with, they make the most of whatever falls into their hands and build their own stuff from it. Perfect example, Chemtech. It's basically Zaun's attempt to create something just as powerful as Piltover's Hextech. But just like in Piltover, I don't know how Zaun's relationship with magic is going to work after Arcane Season 2. Before Season 2, though, it's pretty clear. Zaun's all about exploiting magic for their own benefit, like Silco, for example, who straight up told people to use Hextech crystals to build weapons. The biggest difference between how Zaun and Piltover view magic is ethics. In the Undercity, ethics basically mean nothing. Sure, some people care, but most don't give a damn. Look at Chemtech enhancements. Yeah, Hextech enhancements exist, but Zaun takes it to a whole other level. They create these freaky, terrifying monsters, and sometimes they're not even enhancing themselves, they're forcibly enhancing other people, like Singed, for instance. Dude finds Vander almost dead and turns him into Warwick. Do you really think Vander wanted to be Warwick? Chemtech, that's peak unethical behavior. If everything worked nice and clean like Hextech, cool. But Chemtech is all jacked up. It's unstable, full of side effects, and they just don't care. So in the end, both Piltover and Zon take full advantage of magic, turning it into science, experiments, inventions, or profit. The only difference is Zon doesn't care about the rules. Speaking of not giving a damn about ethics, let's talk about another region with some twisted morals, Bilgewater. Magic's always been kind of normal in Bilgewater, especially with magical creatures like Yordles, Vastaya, and all sorts of sea monsters roaming around. But actual magic users, super rare. The only tribes we know that are directly tied to magic are the nomadic fortune teller clan that Twisted Fate used to be part of before he got kicked out, and the Buru tribe, the one Eloy's from. Anyway, in Bilgewater, magic isn't unknown, it's just rare, and when it does show up, it usually looks more like gunfire than spells. Bilgewater's a lawless place where only the bold survive however they can. Robbing, killing, hunting sea beasts, you name it. The only art that matters in Bilgewater is profit. It's all about raiding ships, looting treasure, and partying at the tavern afterwards with your crew. And since we're on Bilgewater already, let's slide right over to its neighbor, the Shadow Isles. The Shadow Isles have been drenched in magic since way before the first humans ever showed up. Back when the first spirit of the islands, Maokai, settled there, the land was full of life and beauty thanks to the blessed waters. It used to be a super fertile place, overflowing with natural magic. But now, it's a cursed land crawling with ghosts and the undead, all trapped in eternal suffering caused by a king who lost his mind and didn't know when to quit. This dude, in his obsessive spiral, dragged an entire civilization, a super prosperous one by the way, straight into ruin. The relationship with magic in the Shadow Isles is pure suffering. Everyone there is constantly in pain. After the magical cataclysm destroyed the Blessed Isles and wiped out nearly all life, the few that remained were driven insane, stuck between life and death, totally wrecked. When people are consumed by the black mist, they become obsessed with whatever they were doing when they died. Writing, playing music, murdering, chasing revenge, you name it. It's like they're locked into that one task forever, reliving it over and over like a curse. Take Callista, for example. After she was betrayed and killed, she got stuck in this endless cycle of vengeance, blinded by rage. There are tons of other examples in the Legends of Runeterra cards too. So basically, everyone in the Shadow Isles is stuck and doomed to suffer until they can, in theory, fulfill whatever unfinished business they had in life. But most of the time, that's just impossible. Anyway, moving on to the next region, let's talk about Ixtal. Ixtal is way off the charts compared to the rest of Runeterra. Even though magic is common in places like Ionia, nowhere is it as normal as it is in Ixtal. There, they believe that every material force, every element you can control, is tied to a numbered axiom. For example, by using the 16th axiom, which is related to Earth, a dude can carry a literal ton of rock like it's a backpack. Using the 3rd axiom, tied to water, even a rookie can catch more fish than anyone else out there. That level of knowledge and control over elemental magic makes it so literally everyone in their society uses magic like it's nothing. Just like an American learns to speak English, an Ixtali learns to control at least one element or axiom. And they use those powers to do normal day-to-day stuff, work, live, fit into society. And that social side of magic is super important, because the most powerful among them become part of the Yuntal, which is the dominant caste in Ixtal. They're the ones who have direct contact with Skarner underground, and they're the ones actually running the nation. And this whole deal of magic being ultra common over there shows up in a bunch of ways. Take Ixtal's capital, for example, Ixaucan. The whole city was built by Skarner using his magic to shape rock. And a cool detail is that Ixaucan was built in a strategic spot because it sits right on top of a magical ley line. Those are invisible lines that run across Runeterra, carrying magic from place to place. It's actually super interesting, and I feel like almost nobody even knows those exist. I'll definitely make a video about that in the future. Anyway, because of that ley line, there's this big hall in the center of Ixaucan called the Vidalion. It collects energy from the ley line and allows the Yuntal to, for example, materialize their magic as clothing. That clothing literally forms around their bodies and adjusts perfectly to their needs. On top of that, Ixtal is home to some of the weirdest creatures in all of Runeterra. There are things there that literally don't exist anywhere else, like Zyra. And all of this stuff is what makes Ixtal so unique, because no other place has magic so embedded in everyday life. And the more we learn about the region, the more magical it gets. And I seriously hope we get more stuff about it soon, so we can really dive deeper and get more insight into how their society works, just like we're about to do with the next region, Shurima. In Shurima, the relationship with magic used to be straight-up worship. Back in the golden age of the god warriors, the Ascended, people saw any magical act as something divine, like a literal act of the gods that would bring glory and prosperity to the empire. When a high-ranking human from the Shuriman royal bloodline reached a certain age, or got sick, or was mortally wounded, or whatever, they'd go through the ascension ritual of the sun disk. And that whole process was kind of a blend of elemental and celestial magic. That's how the god warriors were created. It's like the sun disk would blast this insane beam of energy onto the person's body, their body would get completely obliterated, and then their spirit would be reconstructed in a way more powerful form, full of spiritual energy, and they'd come out looking like some divine being that reflected who they were or what they did in life. But after the fall of the sun disk, all hell broke loose. A huge mess happened, and a lot of people ended up moving out to more distant cities, totally hopeless and full of doubt. Whatever faith they had left in the gods got completely crushed when the sun disk went down, because that was the biggest symbol of the Shuriman Empire. But recently, the empire has started to rise again, and along with that, the Shuriman people's faith in the god warriors is slowly coming back too. Now, speaking of magic specifically, even though magic is a powerful thing in Shurima, it's not really common among the average person. The only known non-ascended mage in Shurima is Talia, and she had to go all the way to Ionia to figure out how to control her powers, because she had absolutely no clue how any of it worked. That basically tells us that there aren't many mages in Shurima, unlike in Ixtal, where it's super common. And beyond that, each Ascended's magic works in their own unique way. Azir can control the sands of the desert. Zerath manipulates arcane energy. Renekton doesn't even use magic, so you can't really find a pattern there. Totally different vibe from the next region we're talking about, Targon, where everything is directly tied to celestial magic. But before we dive into Targon, if you're enjoying the video, drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you really want to support the channel, consider becoming a member. There are some pretty cool perks, like early access to videos, and you can even pick a video topic. Alright, let's get back to it. Targon's whole world is centered around celestial magic. At the base, and at the peak of the highest mountain in the world, there are a ton of magical beings living there. From the Vastaya tribe known as the Otrani, who help travelers in need, to actual celestial judges who determine the fate of those taking on what's arguably the hardest journey in all of Runeterra, climbing Mount Targon. There are infinite myths about what happens on that mountain, dating way back. Even back then, there was this belief that if you reach the top, you'd be gifted with a divine existence. A lot of the mountain tribe's culture is built around the gods and celestial beings from the stars and constellations, whether they're aspects, cosmic entities, celestial dragons. Everything is based on what they believe in. The Rakor, for example, are a tribe that worships the sun and war. Their religious order is the Solari. You might recognize the name because that's where Leona's from. There are also the Lunari, who worship the moon and night. There are followers of Tarek, who hand out protective gems to those heading up the mountain. There are also Pantheon's followers. Basically, a bunch of different groups that follow different celestial aspects. And when it comes to the actual journey up the mountain, it's not even the steep climb that's dangerous. The real issue is that the place is full of creatures that are at the top of the danger scale in Runeterra. But even they aren't the biggest threat to everyone. The thing is, the journey to the top is always mysterious and totally different for each person. Tarek and Atreus, for example, had a brutal journey. They fought a ton of monsters and nearly died to make it to the top. Meanwhile, Zoe was just chosen by the aspect of Twilight, and she walked through a portal that dropped her straight at the summit. No struggle at all. So, at the end of the day, no two journeys are ever the same. Some people go through insane physical suffering, while others go through insane mental stuff like hallucinations and whatnot. Basically, in Targon, magic is taken super seriously because it's literally divine. They worship celestials and aspects, and they follow them religiously. That's their relationship with magic, which is completely different from our next region in the video, Bandle City. Bandle City is weird, man. Their relationship with magic is more like playing around, literally. The Yordles are beings made entirely of magic, so for them, magic is just a natural part of life, and nobody knows where Bandle City even is. It constantly moves through space and time, so they just chill over there, Yordles hanging out with other Yordles, and it's all super cartoonish. Like, for real, the whole region is kind of a mess. Yordle magic is kind of like cartoon logic, like Toon Force. Instead of dying from a bomb explosion, for example, they just get blown away all covered in dust. So yeah, it's not serious at all. It's super goofy and playful. Speaking of the Yordles themselves, most of them are pretty kind-hearted toward others, and they've got this crazy trait that sets them apart from other types of magic users and cultures. They can adapt to literally anything. Fizz, for example, turned into an amphibious Yordle just by spending too much time underwater. Vagar was tortured by Mordekaiser, who tried to extract his magic and forced him to use dark magic and all that, which ended up giving him a full-on supervillain complex. So overall, magic in Bandle City is super strong and super unique for each Yordle. Some use it to pull off pranks, like Lulu and Fizz, others use it to create war machines like Ziggs and Rumble, but they always make these crazy and fantastic things, and in the end, it's just Toon Force. It's all a joke. They're just messing around, and you can't really take it too seriously. It's so bizarre that they're even immortal, since they're made of magic. When they die, they simply respawn in Bandle City. Now, let's talk about the Void. The Void isn't exactly a region of Runeterra, it's actually an entirely separate dimension, but I still want to talk about it a bit. There, absolutely everything is magical, since we're literally talking about Void creatures created by the Watchers. Their relationship with magic is one of consumption, just like their relationship with pretty much everything else. The only thing the Void wants is to consume everything that exists, so it can return to nothingness. Pretty simple. Moving on, we have Camavor. We don't have that much information about Camavor and the surrounding kingdoms, but we do know that Camavor was a nation that had pacts with dragons. Also, Viego's sword is a legendary magical weapon passed down from generation to generation. It has the power to connect with the soul of its wielder, allowing it to do all sorts of things, including being summoned into their hand at any moment. So they were definitely pro-magic and likely used it to their advantage, but I don't think it was something super common among literally everyone. I'd probably say it's something similar to Nexus or maybe even Bilgewater. There's a lot of magical stuff around, but the people themselves don't necessarily know how to use it. By the way, in Cathkin, a neighboring nation to Camavor, the primordial demon of joy was sealed away. It's absolutely impossible that a creature that powerful, one that managed to invade the realm of the Celestials and survive, could have been sealed by regular humans without magic. So Cathkin definitely has access to some crazy powerful magic. That said, we don't really know if that's just something available to the top elite, if magic is part of everyday life there, or if that was just something from the past. There's really not much to go on. But yeah, that's basically it. Thanks for watching.